Hello Algebra 1. Most of this video lesson will cover chapter 4.3, which is all about drawing graphs quickly. But I have to finish some information from chapter 4.2 first. The second goal of the chapter was talking about horizontal and vertical lines. And if you look at the chapter, and I invite you to go ahead and read this passage from the chapter, it explains their point of view of how to understand why a horizontal line happens or why a vertical line happens, and also how to graph them. I think there's a simpler way to see it, and that's what I'm going to show you here. If I were to ask to graph the equation y equals 6, here's how I would do it. First of all, I would realize if I was going to find the proper place to place my pen, I would look along the y-axis. And I'd count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6. And at 6, I would just extend that, whoops, didn't mean to move that. I would extend that mark that I had made on the 6th spot there. So that's the line y equals 6. Similarly, if I were asked to graph y equals -4, I'd count down 1, 2, 3, -4, and then I would continue out that line in both directions, and that's the line y equals -4. And extending this basic idea to x equals situations. If I were asked to graph x equals -3, this time I would look along the x-axis, counting from the origin here toward the negative direction, which is this direction, 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and then I would extend this tick mark here down and up in both directions, and that's my line, x equals -3. So I hope you now understand, based on the basic idea that you're making tick marks along the x-axis until you get to -3, you're always going to end up with a vertical line for x equals. And similarly, let's go back to the y equals. You're always going to end up with a horizontal line for any kind of y equals equation where it's just a number. So the only time that these horizontal and vertical lines happen are cases where you only have one variable. You only have y is equal to -4. And if you think about it, any point that I pick along here, if I picked out the coordinates of that point, the point that I'm hovering over right here is the point 9, -4. 9 in the x, -4 in the y. Similarly here, if I hovered right over this point right here on the line, that's the point -5, -4. What they have in common is they both have -4 as their y value. Y equals -4 means it doesn't matter what x I pick. It's going to be along the line where the y is -4. So similarly, going back here, x equals -3, it doesn't matter what y I pick. I could pick y is 10, I could pick y is -6, whatever I pick, the point is along the line x equals -3. Why? Because, well, there isn't even any y, the letter y, in the equation. It's just x equals -3. Okay, now for chapter 4.3, making quick graphs, or making graphs quickly, really is the way I think of it. If you're given an equation like this, 3.5x plus 7y equals 14. Well, first I'm going to walk you through how the textbook explains it, and then I'm going to show you my way. The textbook explains, well, first of all, it's written the equation again, but it's pointed out that y, they're going to substitute in 0 for y. If they do that, then this washes away. 7 times 0 is 0. So really all you have left is 3.5x equals 14. And if that's true, then x is going to be 14 over 3.5. You move that 3.5 over. That's what they've done here. And 14 divided by 3.5 is 4. And so the x-intercept is 4. That's the way the textbook explains this. The x-intercept is 4. I'm going to have a simpler way in just a minute if this isn't making sense. Now let's look at the x situation. X they've done in blue here. If they put in 0 for x, then this washes away. 3.5 times 0, anything times 0 is 0. So all I'm left with is 7y equals 14. So y equals 14 over 7, which is 2. And the y-intercept is 2. So let's look at the graph as they've set it here. If x is 4, well, I pick 4 on the x-axis, and y is 2, well, I pick 2 on the y-axis, then I just draw a line through those 2 points. And that's what they've done here. And in the blue here, they've indicated this is the line, 3.5x plus 7y equals 14. I think there's an even easier way to explain this, if you don't mind. I'm going to show you how to do number 4 and number 10 here. For number 4, I come out with the answer x equals 6, and let me show you why. I call it the cover-up method. If I'm asked, like I am here, find the x-intercept, then I don't need y. Y, I just cover up. I'm left with 6x equals 36. Well, if 6x equals 36, then x is 36 over 6, or in other words, x equals 6. Second question here, I'm asked to find the y-intercept. If I want the y-intercept, I don't need x. And I'm left with 2y. Sorry, I forgot to, there. I don't need x. I'm left with 2y equals 18. And if 2y equals 18, y equals 18 over 2. Or in other words, y equals 9. That's all I've been asked to find. Find the x-intercept. The x-intercept is x equals 6 for question 4. For question 10, I'm asked to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where y equals 9. Okay, so now, let's move on to the next task here. Let's have you do it. Go ahead and do number 2, number 3, number 8, and number 11 based on what I've just shown you. And I'm going to come back in just a second and show you the right answers. Hit the pause button, and when you're ready, come back. Okay, I'm going to assume that you did that. Here are my answers for 2 and for 3, and I'll quickly explain. For 2, I covered up because I was asked to find the x-intercept, so I covered up y. I was left with 3x equals, it's a little hard to see there, 3x equals 6. And I ended up finding that x equals 2 in that case. For number 3, again, the x-intercept, I covered up the y. I'm left with 5x equals negative 30, as I've written here. And you solve that out and you find x equals negative 6. Second batch here, 8 and 11. For 8, notice that 8 and 11 are actually written in 2 different formats. And I'm going to talk a little about that over the next few days. Most of the equations I've shown you so far have been in what's called standard form. And in standard form, the x and the y are together on one side, and the other side's just a number. There's another form out there called y-intercept form. Called slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form we'll get to in a little bit, but it's where y is equal to and x is on the other side. So in this case, if I want the y-intercept, again, I cover up the x and I'm left with y equals 8. Well, y equals 8, that's my answer. For number 11, in that case, it is in standard form. Let me make this a little bit smaller. It's in standard form. I cover up the x, and I'm left with 2y equals negative 16. If 2y is negative 16, then y is negative 8. And so that's my answer to question 11. Okay, now let's put this to use. If I'd been given an x-intercept and a y-intercept, like in question 13, I'm told that the x-intercept is 3. Well, there's 3 on the x-axis, and I'm told the y-intercept is 2. There's that on the y-axis. I draw a line through them. That's all there is to graphing. That's why it's called quick graphs. So all I've done is I've plotted the x and the y-intercept and drawn a line through them. You should be able to do 14 and 16 based on that. Hit the pause button. When you come back, I'll show you the graphs for 14 and 16. Okay, I'm going to assume that you did that and that you have graphs for both 14 and 16. There they both are. 14 is in yellow and orange, and 16 is in all green. Hit the pause button, study these, make sure they match what you drew, or if they didn't, make sure you understand why they didn't. Come to class with any questions if you have them. I want to make sure everybody understands how to graph based on having the x and y intercepts. Instead, we're going to move on to putting all of this information together to do 19 and 25. Let's look first at 19. I've got to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and 19 is written in what I told you is slope-intercept form, where it's y equals and x and everything else is on the other side. 25 is written in standard form. X and y are together. They end up, the quick graph method tends actually to work better in standard form, but I'm going to use it in both methods since the textbook asks me to here. So let's look at 19 first. The reason I ended up with this graph here is because first I covered up x. I got y equals 6. Well, there's y equals 6 right there. Then I covered up y, and I got x plus 6 equals nothing. Well, if x plus 6 equals nothing, then then x must be negative 6 for those two things to cancel out. So there's x is negative 6, and I've drawn a line through it. That's my graph for 19. Like I said, 25 goes even more smoothly. In the case of 25, here's my graph, and the way I got that. I cover up the x, I get negative 4y equals 20. If that's true, then y equals, I move that negative 4 over, y equals 20 divided by negative 4, or in other words, y equals negative 5. There's this point. Now I try finding the x-intercept. Negative 2x equals 20. That means x equals 20 divided by negative 2, or in other words, x equals negative 10. I draw a line through those two green points. I only needed 2 points, and I've drawn my line. That's my graph for number 25. Hit the pause button and go ahead and do number 26 yourself. Okay, I'm going to assume that you did that, and I hope you ended up with this graph. The way to do that, you cover up that, and you get 8y equals negative 16, or in other words, y equals negative 2, which is this point. Then you cover up this, you get negative 4x equals negative 16, or in other words, x equals 4. Draw a line through those 2 points, and that's your graph. That's it. This is your homework for tonight. Come in with any questions that you have in addition to these homework answers, and I'll look forward to seeing you next class.